back to Rebecca's Random Adventures. This is Bilbo, and today we're talking vintage books inherited from my parents and grandparents. I never thought of them as vintage books until I went and looked at the dates, and I was like, hey, I have more vintage books than I realized because I love old things. Speaking of old things, this dress is actually a dress that my grandma made for my mom in the 80s. So this is the very first book. It was published in 1955. It belonged to my grandma. She was an English teaching major in college during that time. The first edition of this book was published in 1861, and it is a book of songs and lyrical poems. So poems like Shakespeare, the Bronte sisters, and a couple of others as well. Robert Burns. It's a lovely compilation. I love that the pages are so like yellowed with age, and the outside is like very, very aged as well. Very aesthetic. This is very, very, very special. It is a cookbook from the 50s. You can see it has had its share of wear and tear, but it's hardback. It's called Look and Cook, published by the Gloucestershire Training College of Domestic Sciences. The recipes in there are really cool, very simple and easy to learn. This book was first published in 1952, and this edition was reprinted in 1958. So it was published in London by J.M. Denton Sons. And what I like is like not only the cool recipes that I really want to test, but also the pages are slightly glossy, which is very What I really like about this book is the pages are slightly glossy, and that's a good thing for a cookbook, because if you have a surface like this in the kitchen, it's not going to last very long. This one is actually like made with a kind of more durable paper, and this is, no, that was inside it. It has recipes for classic British things like hot water crust pastry and scones, and I think I tried a lamb steak recipe from here before. So this second book belonged to my grandpa when he was in college. He was in seminary in Singapore, and it was a book about teaching yourself to write, and he became a really good writer. He could write essays and sermons and all that kind of thing. So this is the outside. Teach Yourself to etc. is like still a series that's around today, but this is a classic one. You can look at hardcover, lovely. First printed in 1942, this impression is from 1956, printed in Great Britain for the English Universities Press. So it has really interesting advice in here about how to write different types of books, like fiction, novels, detective fiction, autobiographies, as well as non-fiction. But actually, seems like most of it is actually about fiction. Interestingly, as far as I know, he's never written any fiction. It has a little stamp of his. It has his signature, and it has a little stamp of his. And he was very proud of every single book that he owned, and he still loves his book collection to this day. So this one is a little bit different. It's actually a paperback of On the Banks of Plum Creek by Laura Ingalls Wilder. I grew up reading this every weekend at my grandma's house. She had a whole shelf full of these books, my favorite books ever. This is a Harper Trophy book. I don't think it's a very old edition. It looks very old. The pages are yellowed. Let's take a look at the date. So yeah, this was printed in 1971, but it has the classic illustrations from the Little House series that are quite beloved by people who love the book. So these illustrations are so beautiful, pen and ink, and it's she wrapped it in plastic at some point to protect it, because as a kid I had no the 1970s were not considered vintage when I was growing up in the 1990s, so they weren't considered like antiques to be preserved or something. I would have read it when I was like 5 or 6. So I have a few Little House books. This one is a paperback as well, but this one is by Rose Wilder Lane, and it's called Let the Hurricane Roar. Again, I love this feeling of the yellowed pages, and It says here copyright renewed 1961. I would think that it came from the 70s or 80s, but it also has a few of these pen and ink classic illustrations. Some of these books from my grandpa's collection were from the 50s. Like I said, he was in seminary. So this is very special. It is an authentic leather-bound vintage KJV, King James Version Bible. And this one is so small. It actually has an inscription dedicated to James, King of Great Britain, France and Ireland, defender of the faith in front. And there's a license here that grants letters patent granted by Her late Majesty Queen Victoria to William Collins, Sons and Company. Printed in Great Britain as well. And it is tiny. This one, so this is the authorized. There's no actual date telling me when it was published. Obviously, this is not one that was printed in Queen Victoria's reign as far as I know. But I looked it up online. I think it's from the 50s or so. And it is, very nicely bound. It is wearing a little bit leather. It's getting dry. But it is so adorable and so cute. So here's another book of poetry. It's a junior anthology of poetry for schools in Southeast Asia. So this one is not printed in the UK, it's printed in Singapore, first published in 1952. Copyright in all the countries which are signatory to the Berne Convention. 1952, this one was published or printed in 1971. That was ancient history. So there are beautiful poems here, mainly classic poems like the other one by, Thomas Peacock, Eugene Field, George W. Russell. So this variety of classic English poems, but they were edited and compiled for schools in Singapore or Malaya during that time. So these are my grandpa's books from seminary. Did I say he loved books? These are only some of his books. He's kept them for so long and he's given a few of them to me. So these have his address from when he was in seminary in the 50s. So pretty sure these are from the 50s as well. Alright, so this one is Letters and Papers from Prison by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And this one was published in 1953. Where was it published, I wonder? Printed in Great Britain, Collins, Clear Type, London and Glasgow. Okay, this one, The Life of D.L. Moody. It's a paperback as well, like the Bonhoeffer book. Printed in the United States, that's first. Well, I guess it's D.L. Moody, right? It has his address in Singapore and he wrote the date, the 19th of April, 1957. Has a picture of D.L. Moody. And no publication date, but he wrote the date there, so it was probably published before or around 1957. This one is C.H. Spurgeon, Sermons on the Book of Daniel, hardback as well. It says it was a gift from 1968. Somebody gave it to him. Beautiful hardback, very, very good condition. That's what page protectors are for, I guess. And it says here, first published in 1966 by Purnell and Sons, printed in London as well. So, C.H. Spurgeon. Have I read it? No. I did read the Bonhoeffer one. I haven't read most of these. Okay, let's look at this one. This one is very classic. Bible themes from Matthew Henry. So judging by the font on the hardcover and the style of it, I'm guessing 60s as well. Just really old. This enlarged edition was published in 1964. It was first published in 1953. And it's in very, very good condition. It has topics like judgment, obedience, covenant, very authority. Ooh, very. I think Matthew Henry was a Puritan. Now this is very special because I actually quote this in my writing. It's Here I Stand, A Life of Martin Luther. It has woodcut pictures in it. It's a biography, and it has his seminary stamp there that he had. He must have been so proud to stamp all his books and be like, this is mine. You have a personalized stamp to stamp it with. So cool. It says copyright 1950 by Pierce and Smith, printed and bound at Nashville, Tennessee, United States of America. Moving from theology, we have some very interesting books of all kinds of topics. I have the entire Britannica Junior Encyclopedia collection. It's just too many to hold right now, so I'm just going to show you two, but I can assure you I have the whole thing. When I say my grandpa loves books, he also loved buying books for the kids. So he actually bought the Encyclopedia Britannica for them in the 70s when they were growing up. So cool, right? He's really cool. This one was from 1979. The first edition was in 1934. So this is the 1979 edition, and I wanted to show you the atlas. Because they were published in 1979, they still have maps and information regarding the Soviet Union, which is a pretty interesting, piece of history right there. I also really like the photography and the illustrations. It's in color, and there's some very interesting, I love the way that, the font and everything about it. It's in very good condition, and actually very interesting to read. There was a second set of encyclopedia as well, the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Science and Technology, published by Macmillan. So it is entirely about science and technology. It has very nice colored pictures and illustrations. It was published in 1978 and tells you about science and technology that was during that time, which I think is an interesting piece of, artifact from history. These last two are Reader's Digest books, and Reader's Digest prints very heavy, very thick books. This one was bought by my grandpa for my grandma. Apparently it was too easy for her because she was a very advanced seamstress already, obviously. And it was published in 1976, so they had very good quality of printing. Some of the illustrations are in color. Very good photography, color photography available during that time already. I find the sewing techniques kind of illustrated to be interesting as well. I mean, some things don't really change even over time. And a Reader's Digest guide to the complete do everything yourself, do it yourself manual. It's like how to build a house, how to do plumbing, how to do woodworking, how to install vents and insulation and build deck chairs and just like everything DIY. I guess before they had like DIY YouTube channels, this is what people used. I have not had the opportunity to use a manual from the 1970s to install a door or an oil burner or a circuit breaker or plumbing or roof tiles, but if I should ever need to do so, then I would have a guide from 50 years ago almost, how to get it done. Wow, it's been so fun looking at these vintage books on so many different types of topics, like cookbooks, sewing, non-fiction, biographies, like everything. Fascinating stuff. I did not even know some of the dates in which these books were published, which makes me appreciate them more because they're even like more vintage than I thought they were. Anyway, if you're interested in more random adventures, do like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. Bye!